Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and for this episode, I wanted to talk about what to do when everything is changing. So for the last few months, and even recently, I've been seeing so much change both in the bigger picture and on the small picture, on all of the people that I have been around, all of my clients, all of my students, as well as the people, in the world and in politics, in social movements. There's so much going on all of the time. There's so much that is changing. So what do we do when everything is changing? Because there is this feeling of, in the collective, of uncertainty, of transition, of instability. And it is times that, I follow astrology as my mom is an astrologer. So for many years, this was going to be a time of change. Now, we need to understand that there's parts of that is uncomfortable for us. And as well, it's something that is natural. Change, whether it is personal, whether it is relational, societal, it is part of the universe. It's a universal law. Everything changes. The only thing that doesn't change is that everything changes. I have talked about this multiple times during the podcast. It's something that, we need to normalize more and more and more. Now, of course, just because, change is a part of life doesn't mean that it's easy, because we have a lot of different ways and mechanisms that are geared to stay in the same way. So what do we do when the familiar structures all start to fall away, all starts to change, when we start to change, when everything around starts to change? We need to understand from a nervous system perspective that things feel unsettling when everything is changing, because our system is, and our brain, they are geared towards predictability and safety. We need to feel safe. And when we don't feel safe, our system is not going to function as optimal as it can. A lot of times when something changes, either when it's a routine that changes or something bigger changes, our nervous system can go into the stress mode or into a reaction mode, as I have talked many times here, into the fight, flight, freeze area experience. So there's a lot of discomfort doing these changes, and it's something that it's biological, it's part of our system. So when we are struggling sometimes, or it's unsettling for our system, it's okay. Like, you're not failing, there's nothing wrong. This is how it's supposed to be. When we need to understand that in our society, we have grown accustomed to trying to not change. Predictability, as I said before. We develop different roles that we attach ourselves to that. So we attach ourselves to roles, to relationships, to routines, to beliefs. And when this start to shift, we start to create what one of my teachers is saying, a death. When someone starts to change, it creates a death. I talk about this a lot of times with a lot of my clients, that whenever they are on a personal journey of transformation, and if they are in a relationship or in a marriage, if the other person is not actively doing that, or whether they are, the person that they knew, if my client is actively changing, the other person is not going to experience that person they knew any longer. So there's a kind of death, which means that there's a kind of love, of loss, even when it is positive. When it is positive, so we need to understand that that can a lot of times lead us to understanding. Okay, there's something dying. We need to create space for that it is dying, because a lot of times when we are changing, actively or not actively changing, who we thought that we were no longer is. And we need to be open to that being the case. Of course, there's a lot of gifts in the change, because change disrupts our autopilot, everything that is predictable. It exposes all of the patterns that we are experiencing unconsciously, all of these different beliefs that we have unconsciously, and it invites us to grow, to realign, to evolve in different ways that perhaps we didn't even know that we could. And actually, a lot of times when there's so much that is happening outside, when there's so much change, when if you follow astrology, when there's so many planets that are showing us that change is happening, as my mom used to tell me, you can, ride that wave. You can use that momentum of things changing to change personally. When things outside are changing, we can use that momentum to support our change. Because if everything is changing and we don't know where we will stand, why not change ourselves? Because a lot of times when things are seemingly okay and calm, and we are changing, we are the one that are disrupting that. But in this way, everything is already being disrupted. So why not? So, a lot of times in my life, I had to create this change. And sometimes that came from my own accord. I decided to go to change country, change different work, different careers, different things. And like, it was my choice. That doesn't mean that it was always easy, but it was my choice. And a lot of times things didn't came like that. Things just broke down. They ended. Relationships ended, even though I wanted to continue or I wanted to keep on living somewhere. And then from a visa perspective, I had to go. Things change. So, when life doesn't, allow us to change, then we are stuck. But life sometimes takes things away because they no longer serve us, or it's creating space for something. So we need to understand a lot of times how it is that we can use these changes. And, a lot of times as we are going through these changes, we need to understand, okay, what do we do? For me, a lot of times, and this has been a huge part of my path, it was about reconnecting with myself, allowing myself to become more and more grounded, and understanding what it is that I have control over, in a sense. And we usually don't have much control over most things, but at least a sense of control. One is what I'm doing. So I can spend the time in my head, as I used to do and as most people do, just trying to analyze everything and worrying about everything and stressing about everything. Or we can just take the time to connect, perhaps, going outside to nature, put our feet on the ground, allowing ourselves to ground. We can connect with our breath, slow our breath down, count the breath. We can create space for making decisions, for creating change. Instead of doing everything really fast, we can slow it down. We can allow ourselves to create different anchor points during the day. Like for me, a lot of times that has been when I'm drinking water or when I'm eating. It hasn't been connected to work so much. It's been those things. That is what creates the structure during my day. So I know that I have that. That keeps certain things that are seemingly not changing. Therefore, it allows my system to be a little bit more at ease when everything else is more flexible, more malleable, or changing all of the time. We can focus on those things that are stable, that perhaps, if we are lucky to have a home or have our family, as far as that is there, that is stable. We can focus, as I said, on our daily habits. We can focus on our body, doing different somatic practices, connecting with the body, moving, perhaps exercising, depending on what you like to do. We can focus on our inner world, the world of our feelings. That is something that we can actually, even though that's all the time changing, we can notice it. That is what we can focus on noticing that. We can focus, if we know, and I have talked about this many times during the podcast in our episodes, on our values that for a while they might not change. So just trying to stay with that which isn't changing. So asking yourself, what remains unchanged within yourself? What is it that is still stable? What is it that is still okay to focus on as anchor points? And, as I said, allowing the change, because whenever we are changing, we're evolving, we are going with the natural flow of things. I will talk about this in a moment, with more about the cycles and nature. But whatever it is that is not longer serving us needs to finish. And whenever we do that and we create space for that, we can grieve, we can carry some sadness that we need to grieve for whatever it is that we are closing on a chapter of our life, and we move forward to whatever it is that is coming next. So, like, a lot of people can create rituals or different ceremonies when something finishes or when something starts. Feel free to explore that sometimes. There's a lot of times as well. I love this, that a lot of times that I'm working with people, whenever there's a change, they go to the what if scenarios, all of the different things that can happen. And and we all usually, we go towards the worst case scenarios. So I often just open the space and say, yes, there is a possibility. And also, what if, and go to a more positive scenario, or to a nicer scenario, or something that is beautiful or amazing or whatever it can be. So not just closing ourselves to what it can be a what if scenario that is negative or the worst case one, but also the positive ones. So if we keep on allowing ourselves to work on that, but also, as I keep on saying, and this I keep on repeating myself a lot, coming back to the present moment, focusing on the present moment, what isn't changing in this present moment. When we allow ourselves to focus on the present moment, then that helps. And also, it helps us to not be alone. I know that I have a huge tendency, and I love spending time alone. I have done that for many years of my life, and I love that. And many people are, that's a good space for them. Majority of the time, we need to stay connected. We need our community, our tribes, however you want to call it, our friends, our family, to stay connected, to help that sometimes as a way of supporting our nervous system to self-regulate. Don't isolate yourself. We went through some years ago, as we all know, we went through a period of isolation, and that can be really challenging a lot of times for mental health. Doesn't mean that there's no value in that, because it can be. It's just that we need to understand what's our experience. But as I mentioned before, there is this understanding that everything changes. Nothing stays the same. In the Buddhist teachings, when I was learning, one of the principal and universal laws is that everything changes. Nothing stays the same. Even the things that seem to be the same doesn't. The walls behind me that I have now in this room, even though they seem permanent, they won't be. Whether that is in 1 year, 5 years, 100 years, 1000 years, it's still not permanent. My body is not permanent. Even at this moment, there's hundreds and millions of things changing within me. So even though it seems that nothing is changing, it is. In nature, we have all of the cycles. We can see it a lot of times with the trees and the plants outside. That is all of the time changing. The seasons, the tides, everything changes. So When we focus on impermanence, when we understand that as a way of connecting with ourselves and our changes and our, in a sense, requirements for our growth, it requires for certain things to stop being or to change or to shed what no longer serves to create space for the new. So, we are not here to stay the same all of the time. We're here to experience, we're here to evolve, we're here to change, we're here to explore, to be curious about life. So the more that we understand that if everything changes and we look back at our life, we don't even need to look at everybody else's life and throughout history, which everything has changed, just our own life. Just look back. How much have you changed since you were a baby up until now? How much have you changed in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, in the last 20 years, in the last month? And you're still here. And yes, most likely there were super challenging times, super angry times, super like moments of a lot of grief, and most likely a lot of amazing stuff. A lot of what we would call positives and a lot of negatives. There's always that. We need to trust in the universe a lot of times, and we need to trust in ourselves, in our capacity. So when we surrender ourselves, we, try to let go of that control that we think that we have over things, we can start to flow a little bit more. We can allow life to move through us instead of resisting it. We can allow whatever it is that is calling for us to actually, lead us into that direction. Because when we cannot see that, we will be stuck where we were. That is why a lot of times, we use the times of change as a time to actively heal, to go towards those blockages, those traumas that we have, because we all have them, and we dig in and we actively change. And yes, that might be a process like it is for many, that the process depends on each of us, what we have, what we want to explore. But it's a wonderful time to do that. Because as I said before, if everything is changing, we can use that momentum of that wave to actually get to where we want to go. So I invite you to reflect, in your own life. Look at what is changing. What in your life is asking you to be released? What part of you is being strengthened by doing this? And if you trusted these transition periods, these changes, how would you show up differently in this world? I know that I show up very differently now than what I used to when I was younger. There's versions of me, versions and versions and versions of me that died for this version to be here. So I trusted, and I keep on trusting. Not everything is easy, it's just that I keep on trusting. And if there's a lot of changes around you, remember that that doesn't mean that there's something wrong. If there's a lot of changes within you, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong. You're not lost. You are not unsafe. It might feel unsafe, but you are safe. And the more that you create the practices, the containers, the spaces for you to feel safer, the easier it is to navigate through these changes. And it can still feel uncomfortable, but most importantly, feel what's happening, feel what it is that is taking place within you. Because I think I said this many times, it's not your task to control the storm, It's about being able to be with it, navigating, being steady when there's a storm outside, when everything changes, that is the storm. So just what can you do? I would love, as always, to hear from you. What do you already do? What from the things that I had talked about perhaps resonated? Are you going to start introducing? Are you going through big changes in your life? Are you actively doing that? Is it happening for you, not to you, for you, but not actively you doing it? I would love to know what's changing outside in your sphere of life, not just what's happening in the world, we know that, but what's happening in your world, in your just community, family, your friendship spaces, your tribe. As always, thank you so much for being here. It's lovely to be back, taking some time off, but now I'm back here. As always, leave a comment, whatever it is that you're finding this episode. There's so much that I want to keep on sharing. There's a lot that is coming up soon with all of my online platforms, Conscious Moments. So just check it out. If you're listening to this now, as this is coming out in at the end of February 2026, then it might not be ready for a few more weeks, but if you're listening to this later, go and check it out. As always, thank you for being here. See you next time. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.